Tamra, you're in Olympia, is that correct?
That is correct.
Excellent. And
Yeah.
I spoke with Dr. Schlicker, who was in Tacoma, and I'm in Seattle. So always good to have some folks from the Pacific Northwest sharing their insights. So thanks for joining us. And let's just start by having you give a introduction to yourself and a little bit about your background.
My name is Tamra Ruymann. I am the Chief of Digital Healthcare at PSW, formerly known as Physicians of Southwest Washington. My organization, it was an independent physician association formed back in 1995. By a lot of independents in our current market area or our current county, I would say. Since then, we have expanded our growth significantly. We've partnered with a large hospital organization, Multicare Health Systems, and we are really focused on population health and value-based care, which is really not what this topic is about. But I just recently attended Vive and had some epiphanies on the workforce that I wanted to share today. So,
Well, we'll take whatever perspective you want to give us today, and maybe we can have you back on a future date and dive into some other topics. But certainly, yeah, thanks for kicking it off. So, how do those values and communication styles of different generations impact workplace dynamics, and what strategies can organizations implement to make a more collaborative work environment, especially among those multi-generational teams?
yeah, so I'm going to just sort of go through the different generations that are in the workforce currently
Perfect.
today. And again, I do want to throw out that disclaimer. This is not my information. I didn't do the market research. I am just repeating some of the things that I have learned because I felt like they were really good for me to consider as I am bringing on new folks into my department and to my organization. So we have about four different generations that are currently in our workforce today. We have the baby boomers, we have Gen X, the millennials, and Gen Z. Baby boomers really, their focus is on their work ethic. They're extremely independent and self-assertive. They are career focused, so they're goal oriented. They also tend to um, view themselves through their career. So how successful they've been in their career is how successful they are personally. They often prioritize work over personal life, which I think falls into, I'm not a baby boomer, but I probably straddle a little bit there. And so I see that in myself with Gen X. And then their communication preferences are really the face-to-face communication. They would rather have face-to-face or at least a phone conversation as their preference. Then Generation X, which I will admit that would be me. You know, we were part of the first group that saw technology. You know, I think we had Atari when I was in my younger years,
Ex
and
Great system.
yeah. And we've seen a lot of different socio-political changes. We also are very hard workers, and we aren't, it says that we're pretty good on emphasizing a work-life balance, but I would say that we, depending on where you fall into the realm of what Generation X is defined as, 1965 through 1980 as your birth range, I think that you sort of fall into two different groups there. We are hyper independent. I would agree with that. We're pretty flexible learning new systems. We're not, I remember in my earlier years working in his previous position, we had people who they wanted their manuals and you were going to have to peel those manuals out of their cold dead fingers.
Hmm.
But I'd say that the Gen X is capable of implementing technology within the work that they do. Millennials are the next group, and they are very, very much about communication and inclusion. They value that personalized and frequent communication, and they like to emphasize diversity, inclusion, and teamwork. They like flexibility. They want the remote work options. And they're very much about professional growth. they like to actively seek different things to enhance their professional growth, I guess is what I would say. Their communication style is very collaborative and inclusive. So they want to have communication where it is, the team collaborating and the open dialogue between all. And they also want to make sure that there's no group that has preferential treatment or unfair advantage over another. They like words and communication. They've got a different verbal and written impact. It's an art to them. So that's a very good description of it. And then they expect some HR role in fostering that inclusive communication. They want their HR team to be participatory in that and directive. And then Gen Z, which is our newest generation moving into the work environment, they grew up in the digital age. So when they were born, they had digital at their fingertips from the beginning. And they want meaningful work that aligns with their personal driven values. And they also are big on work-life integration, making sure that it's not taking over from your personal life, or your work life isn't driving everything. And they're very much about prioritizing social impact and sustainability. When you talk about their communication style, they like informal and quick. I think one of the things that I heard at Vibe that was very enlightening to me was, if you want to capture a Gen Z attention, you've got about 8 seconds to do so, which I thought was
Wow.
not something that I would have known. And for some of these folks, this would be my youngest child. He went through COVID, so for at least a year, and for him it was more like 2 of his school years. It was all done digitally and remotely, and so he's sort of grown up in where that actually works for him, and some other folks may not be able to work in that same way. So that was a lot. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And just from your perspective, looking at the broad spectrum of preferences and values, where do you see technology kind of fitting in there? And you certainly talked about how some generations are kind of immersed in it, some are more easily able to adopt it or change, and then maybe there's some unwillingness or difficulty with adjusting. How do you see that digital age kind of playing out in a workforce so diverse as it is today?
I think there's a few things. So I think for some of our older generations who aren't as technically inclined, we need to really be able to provide education and training that allows them to understand. My husband and I work in the technology space, so I have a little more on top of my husband. But when thinking about him, and today he had an actual physician appointment online, and getting him to understand how to get that set up and making sure that he had the right instructions so that he was on time. And, if he's not 15 minutes early, he's late. So he wants to be there on time. So some of that, and providing those instructions that are step-by-step with guidance to help support folks who aren't just using that user interface and figuring it out, I think is important. And then going down to what I just said about the 8 seconds to attract somebody. If I'm out looking for a new employee, well, what I got from that is when I am pushing out my job description or my advertisement for my position, I need to be able to capture them in that first 8 seconds through some sort of engagement that is a little different than I think we've done it in the past. We like to write long, drawn out job descriptions and here's what the job entitles, but I need to make it more of an advertisement or marketing ploy that is quick and to the point to get that attention. So
Yeah, definitely capture them in the first sentence. Don't put the most important piece at the end of a paragraph. And then how do you balance from your perspective, just looking at the workforce and available job applications or people applying? I mean, you can't really take age into consideration necessarily that much, but are you thinking about, okay, what team are they going to be on? What's the kind of, age differences? I mean, how does that play in your current role and what you do?
Well, actually, what I'm learning. So first, I want to be very transparent. Again, like I said, I think that what I learned is something that I am going to start implementing within my department, my organization. But I think one of the big things that I'm not sure there is that digital divide, or there's that divide in communication styles. And so we've got to account for that. But what we don't do a really good job of is, what does each of these generations bring to the table? I think that is something that we should focus a little bit more on, and recognize that collaboration piece that brings a lot of value. So where I would go with that is, when you think about your baby boomers, they have that institutional knowledge that likely the other generations don't bring. And when you think about your Gen Z, or just going from the oldest to the youngest, they have that innovation, that they have different expectations on how things should work and how they approach doing their job. And if you bring the institutional knowledge, everything in between with the other generations, and that innovation and that digital awareness and that digital greatness that comes with the Generation Z together, like what we can do to solve for administration and administrative expenses, what we can do to smooth out some of the workflows that are in place from a technology standpoint today. I think we have a lot of opportunity there. But what we've got to do is get through that communication piece and make sure that we're
Yeah.
communicating with the right generations the right way to capture them.
Yeah,
Which means
absolutely.
it's a multi-channel, right? You got to do
Yeah.
it in a
Yeah.
multi-channel.
You can almost think about it as, a learned sharing space where people, have different work experiences, but maybe also different kind of values and generational preferences, and they can help teach the other person the best way for communications or innovation, or in ways to utilize technology, and kind of create a more cohesive, collaborative experience. So that's great insight. Thank you very much for sharing. Unfortunately, that's it for our time today, but well, I'd love to have you back on, and if anyone wants to, they can connect with you and LinkedIn and through channels, and hopefully we'll get some sunshine here pretty soon. Who knows?
Yeah, appreciate your time. Thank you.